The U.S. military is preparing for potential operations with Iran if President Trump orders an attack.
The U.S. is mounting its largest military buildup in the Middle East since 2003.
There's another beautiful armada floating beautifully toward Iran right now.
At least a dozen warships, collectively worth an estimated $50 billion, have been deployed to the region. Satellite imagery shows the U.S. Navy aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln in the Arabian Sea. And a second carrier strike group, led by the USS Gerald R. Ford, is on the way.
We have the most powerful military anywhere in the world, and it's not even close.
Along with the carriers, the U.S. has deployed 9 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, capable of shooting down ballistic missiles and deploying Tomahawk cruise missiles. The U.S. Navy also has 3 littoral combat ships near the Strait of Hormuz that are built to find and destroy sea mines.
The Lincoln aircraft carrier is armed with F-35C and F-18 fighter jets that can attack targets. It also has EA-18 Growler electronic warfare planes that jam enemy defenses, as well as E-2D Hawkeye flying radar planes that act as the eyes of the fleet. From the carrier, those aircraft could reach Iran without using any other country's airspace. The U.S. is bringing additional THAAD and Patriot anti-missile systems in from Texas and Japan, according to flight tracking data, satellite imagery, and U.S. officials.
We have a tremendous force going there, just like we did in Venezuela.
Iran is very different from Venezuela.
Iran has warned that it'll retaliate if attacked by America.
It seems to them that the US president keeps saying this: the US army is the strongest army in the world. The strongest army in the world may sometimes get slapped so hard that it cannot stand up straight. They keep saying we've sent an aircraft carrier towards Iran. Very well. An aircraft carrier is certainly a dangerous piece of equipment. But more dangerous than the carrier is the weapon that can send that carrier towards the bottom of the sea.
Iran has released an AI-generated video as part of its psychological warfare campaign. The video shows a Fatah hypersonic missile hitting the USS Abraham Lincoln. The Iranian missile is shown cleaving the aircraft carrier in two. The video comes as Iran has ordered more ballistic missile tests. Tehran is flexing its muscles by displaying the power of its arsenal.
Iran says it's at full military readiness and has warned that U.S. bases would be legitimate targets if Washington attacks, but Tehran could also strike back using non-conventional methods.
Iranian military drills in the Strait of Hormuz, a show of force ahead of a possible U.S. attack, a vital shipping passage that Iran could shut down. Iran's most fearsome military option is its array of ballistic missiles, which it could use to target U.S. bases in the region. Iran could also target Israel, launching a huge number of missiles at once to overwhelm the Iron Dome defense system. Iran's proxy forces are another way it can strike out at the U.S., Israel, and other allies. The Houthi rebels in Yemen still have the capability to target shipping in the Red Sea, however. There's also the possibility of terror cells carrying out attacks abroad. Then there's cyber warfare. Iran's advanced hacker network could target infrastructure, including electric grids, hospitals, and oil and gas facilities in the US, Israel, or Europe.
Iran has threatened to place underwater explosives in the strategic waterway to damage ships and possibly block one of the world's most important oil routes.
It's not clear which capabilities Iran would use first, but its arsenal of available tools means the US must think twice before it attacks.
As we just saw, there's a massive buildup of American military assets around Iran. How likely do you think it is that the U.S. will attack?
The president has now conducted a military attack on Caracas, which went flawlessly, and he's conducted a military attack on the tunnels the nuclear infrastructure in Iran, that also went flawlessly. So right now the president believes that he can do this stuff without much risk, which is, by the way, a very dangerous frame of mind because there's a lot of risk involved.
They've already developed missiles that can threaten Europe and our bases overseas, and they're working to build missiles that will soon reach the United States of America. They were warned to make no future attempts to rebuild their weapons program, and in particular, nuclear weapons, yet they continue.
We will not bow down in the face of any of these difficulties. World powers are lining up with cowardice to force us to bow our heads. Just as you did not bow in the face of difficulties, we will not bow down in the face of these problems.
We are very concerned about the heightened rhetoric we're seeing around the region, by the heightened military activities, war games, or just military, increased military naval presence and in the region. And we encourage both the United States and the Islamic Republic of Iran to continue to engage in diplomacy in order to settle the differences.
If the U.S. seems eager to intervene in Iran's affairs right now, it's at least partially because there's an opening to do so because of how weak Iran is right now. You have to wonder how widespread these protests actually are, since we've seen other mass protests in recent years. Like, how much trouble is the regime in? Staggering number of people, reportedly from many towns and cities across the country, out protesting, and who believe Iran's theocracy should end.
Iran's economy is facing one of its sharpest declines in years.
The country's currency, the rial, has crashed to a record low.
50 years ago, you could buy a US dollar for about 70 Iranian rials. 50 days ago, it cost you about 900,000 rials for one US dollar. 50 minutes ago, last I checked, you needed somewhere between 1.3 and 1.5 million rials for that same dollar. Water shortages, gas shortages, power outages, too much air pollution, too hot, too cold. By any reasonable standard, these are all signs of an exceptionally vulnerable economy.
Israel says at least 3 of Iran's top military commanders were killed, and its largest uranium enrichment site was damaged.
The U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime.
The Iranian regime is unprecedentedly weak abroad and at home.
There is undeniably a window of opportunity here. Iran's response was actually twofold. One part defiance, one part willingness to talk. The US in turn seemed to signal it's listening, but weighing its options.
Iran wants to negotiate, yes.
Iran's top diplomats have arrived in Geneva for a new round of indirect talks aimed at averting a war with the United States.
The U.S. and Iranian officials are back at the negotiating table, with the White House pushing for a new nuclear deal.
The president has obviously been quite clear in his demands of the Iranian regime. Zero nuclear capability is something he's been very explicit about.
Minister Abbas Araghchi told Iranian television on Wednesday that while they are willing to talk, they do have their own red lines.
Iran has consistently pursued a strategy aimed at the peaceful use of nuclear energy, while demonstrating readiness to address any concerns regarding the nature of its nuclear program and to ensure its exclusively peaceful character.
Following today's talks, a U.S. official telling NBC News that progress was made, but there are still a lot of details to discuss. While Iran's foreign minister telling state media that the two sides, quote, agreed on some general guiding principles, they are at least talking, at least on some level. Give us the view from the region. Was enough accomplished in Geneva to avoid military escalation in the region?
No, not enough in Geneva. Now, the question is whether or not more can be achieved, as Monica was laying out there.
Without a breakthrough in diplomatic negotiations, which we have not seen, that I do think that we're seeing a higher risk of the U.S. conducting strikes. And of course, that then leads to this question about what's the U.S. objective here. I suspect that the U.S. objective is probably going to be limited to things like nuclear facilities, potentially Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps sites, rather than bigger objectives like regime change, that is a lot more risky. U.S. doesn't have ground forces there. It doesn't look like it's going to ever put any in. So I think that's sort of where we sit right now.
So which raises the question, what would be the objective of a U.S. action against Iran? I mean, if it's not regime change.
Well, remember, this is President Trump, so his objective would be to do something which thrills people cinematically, right? I mean, this is what the president does, right? He appoints people to his cabinet who look good, who play the part. So, you know, he will be very satisfied with a lot of explosions and a lot of broken stuff in Iran. That doesn't lead to regime change. Regime change can't happen just from the air. I mean, you might get lucky, right? You might break enough stuff that the regime collapses. The probability of that is pretty low, though. So when you start talking about regime change, you start looking at Iraq, you start looking at Afghanistan, where we actually had a lot of troops on the ground. And that's a place where the president has never gone.
Notable comment that the president made on Friday. He said regime change in Iran would be the best thing that could happen. No shock that he feels that way, but that is his most overt endorsement of regime change yet.
Regime change in Iran? Well, it seems like that would be the best thing that could happen.
Can you bomb a country into regime change?
No, it's fantasy.
No, you cannot bomb a country into regime change. We've never seen it.
But it will be high risk, and particularly if the decision was to strike the leadership of Iran, even potentially the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, that might put Iran in a position where it feels it has no choice but to throw everything it can back.
Kind of tells you all you need to know about the direction the Islamic Republic is headed in. And it's quite rare also internally to have military, political, and religious elites sing from the same sheet of music. And the same sheet of music is that if there's a strike, no matter how limited, Iran will respond in a massive way.
I won't pretend to know what Trump's strategy is here, but I promise you he will have considered that the option of going to all-out war is not ideal.
The U.S. and Israel have launched strikes and a major military operation targeting Iran. U.S. officials have told NBC News that these strikes are significant and could last several days.
Explosions rocked multiple cities across Iran, including its capital, Tehran. Videos from Tehran show smoke. You see it here billowing over the city.
The U.S. is attacking from air and sea, and that includes with a large array of fighter jets targeting military and security targets in Iran.